مرحبا جميعا، أهلا وسهلا بكم. صباح الخير أو مساء الخير حسب الأوقات الموافقة.
Welcome all. Good morning, good evening, according to your time zones. I am Amal Arab. I'm glad to be chairing this third round of discussion held in cooperation with the World Bank and Rania Foundation. We held previous sessions, but what is more important today is that this discussion follows the release of the World Bank report on learning Arabic language as part of a series on the education poverty among children. Welcome. I would like to point out that the World Bank report is available in Arabic and English at the World Bank site and also on the website of Queen Rania Foundation. Our meeting today, we will focus in this discussion on the sources of learning Arabic language. We will benefit from your experiences and vast expertise in this field. We would like to point out that we will be delving into other issues such as the preparation of teachers and evaluations and supporting faltering readers. Our session will be held today in the Arabic language. Two guests will be speaking to us in English, but the translation or interpretation feature is available. Before we start and listen to our speakers, let us welcome all the participants. We have welcoming remarks that will be by Dr. Walid Ammari from Queen Rania Foundation, and we will be hearing from Ms. Andrea from the World Bank, our discussion, questions, and the expertise we want to listen to. We will be having Dr. Fouad Shafiqi, who from the Ministry of Education and Scientific Research from Morocco. We will also be positing some questions to Ms. Masoud from the Alia Foundation. She will be giving us a presentation on her intervention. We are delighted to have Ms. Sally At-Turki from Dhahran private schools in Saudi Arabia. We are joined also by Mr. Walid Al-Ali from Mohammed bin Rashid Foundation in the UAE. He will holding a discussion with him with a presentation. Please stay tuned. And we welcome also Dr. Nawal Shalabi from the National Center for the Development of Curricula at the Ministry of Education in Egypt. Ms. Taghreed Al-Najjar, she's a pioneer in the field of children development from Dar As-Salwa, also Publication Center. She'll be talking about her experience. We are joined also by Mr. Ma'moon Turki from Saudi Arabia. Welcome to all of you. We will be giving the speech, the turn now to Dr. Walid from Queen Rania Foundation. Welcome all. Good morning, good evening. Thank you, Amal, for this kind introduction, and thank you to all those joining us today. Among the most prominent issues in the World Bank is the need for high quality sources in Arabic. And this is what we have evidenced ourselves. At the Queen Rania Foundation, we completed a review of a general comprehensive review of all education sources in Arabic. And one of the most recommendations is for the importance of children being exposed to the right sources of Arabic and to include Arabic in activities and also to train and educate teachers and the provision of sources that enrich the learning experience. So we have launched a website that gives a general framework containing the main recommendations about reading and writing, in addition to effective strategies that have proven to be successful, is for that to be a reference to Arabic language teachers, and that would also meet their demands and give them the sources and tools that would allow them to raise the level of reading skills among children. And also, this includes also the right sources such as reading material. The director of programs and research, my colleague, Dr. Masoud, will give you an explanation about the electronic website. We are delighted to have this distinguished participation today, who will be enriching the discussion today. Thank you all, and I wish you all a very successful discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. Walid. You highlighted a number of issues that the Queen Rania Foundation has taken, and we will try to include that in our discussion. We are delighted to hear Mr. Andreas Blum, who directs the education sector in the Middle East, in the MENA region at the World Bank. Please.
Thank you, Amal. Thank you very much for this introduction. I think today is a very critical session. We have a panelist of experts around learning resources in Arabic. This is a critical constraint identified in the World Bank report on pathways to improve Arabic literacy in and across the Middle East and North Africa region. We all know that without good books, it's very difficult to learn. I've experienced it for myself with my children. From they are very basic, from 1 year to 3 years old, sitting and pointing at books with good pictures, all the way up to decoding, and later as they become teenagers, to have the right interesting books that are varied for their specific interests, so that they can love to read. That's absolutely essential. We know, those of us who were in the first webinar series of the World Bank around science of reading. This one is about teaching and learning resources. From the World Bank, we are committed to improving learning poverty. That means having all children learning to read. And read is the most critical outcome of primary education, because it's the gateway to future learning. You learn to read, and thereafter you read for future learning. So it's absolutely critical. Then, as it's difficult not to open talking about COVID, as what happens in these days, I think we're all nervous about school openings. What will this new variant entail for us? And most importantly, will it impact us that we have to close schools again around the world, which will impact the very children that we're going to talk about today, because it's the youngest one that will suffer. On the other hand, it has also spurred a lot of innovation in teaching learning material. Most of this, of course, online, but a lot of these innovations we're going to talk about today. And it's critical that we identify the good practices, and that's shared across the region. And we have one common language in Arabic. So we need to take advantage of this shareability of resources, of learning resources. So today, as we advance in the webinar, let us find out how we can best use the resources, teaching learning resources presented here and what is elsewhere, and share it among our countries for the benefit of the children. We have a chance of building back better after COVID, and we need to take that. Then I would very much like to end on thanking all the participants for dialing in, and encourage you to stay tuned. This is a community approach. We need all teachers, we need all educators and institutions to rally around learning to read Arabic. So please stay tuned, engage with us, and just looking very much forward to this webinar. Thank you, Amal. Back to you.
شكرا أندرياس.
Thank you, Andreas, for this introduction and highlight of the issues we will be focusing on. We particularly thank all educations and teachers. We want to arrive at good conclusions, especially as you mentioned, we are living in a very changing world, the corona pandemic, and is imposing a new reality. Dr. Fouad Shafiqi from the Ministry of Higher Education in Morocco. There is no doubt that you have played a pioneering role in teaching Arabic in the early stages of education. We would like to for you to talk to us more about efforts in this regard. Regarding the best resources for learning Arabic, especially in light of all the changes that education is undergoing. Thank you, Ms. Amal. Good morning, good evening, according to your time zones. I'm delighted to be with you today. And I would like to thank the institutions hosting this event, the World Bank and the Queen Rania Foundation, with respect to high quality sources of education of Arabic language. I think it's not, the issue is it does not depend on the presence or absence of such sources, because the window through which these children reach education and sciences and all languages is the school. So for that reason, schools have to provide a good base for the presence of these high quality resources. And we know in many cases we have high quality resources, but they're not utilized in the proper manner. So this is not the only means to improve education. In Morocco, we have elected 8 years ago to develop the education and learning of Arabic in the primary schools, especially in the first grades. This project underwent 3 stages, and we are at the end of the 3rd stage and about to embark on the 4th stage. So we wanted, we had to do surveys to understand what students are reading, what are they learning, what difficulties are they facing, the curriculum, and the also qualifications of teachers. So we managed to identify certain shortages that limited the learning of Arabic. Then we chose a pilot project that involved 90 schools at the level of the whole kingdom. And we worked with a team of national and international experts with strong support from USAID. And we put in place a curriculum for reading Arabic in the first 3 years of education. So we identified that this learning, that it is a main and primary tool for learning and reading Arabic. After this experiment that lasted until 2019, in 2017, we started to generalize this program in all schools. One of the major challenges, and not the only challenge, was the provision of school books that are aligned with the school curriculum. So one of the things that we have chosen, we found out that school books are no longer made by the Ministry of Education. So the ministry started to identify books and then select which books are most appropriate for learning. So we elected school books that were aligned with the curriculum. The same difficulty we encountered because we also introduced the element of stories, because such that students would have a classroom that was assigned specifically focused on reading stories. And we found very difficulty in finding stories or books that carried values that were not in contradiction with the values of society. Perhaps Dr. Al-Turki and the project on which you worked on in Arabic 21, it helped us identify some standards for the selection of books that we offer to children, but we see that we have still a big effort ahead of us to identify the right books. Before we move to another point, Doctor, the issue of learning and high quality school learning resources, what are the standards according to which we can decide that these language resources are high quality, and how can they vary from one region to another? First of all, with respect to books, I'm not talking specifically about school books that follow the curriculum. With respect to complementary books, you know that a child in school, when they arrive in school, they carry their own value system that comes from the school, and then they speak perhaps the local dialect, the Amazigh language, for example. So the language content of a book and the culture and the language that a child brings from his home is a very important issue, and this requires studies. I don't believe that writers or authors who write for children can do that without resorting to extensive studies about the skills and the values that the students bring to the classroom. And they have to focus on vocabulary, on pushing students to research and look for expressions and vocabulary. So a high quality book or resource is one that allows a child to explore vast resources. Of course, there are also sources that make children apathetic to the learning. That's considering that books are the main source for learning and studying Arabic. We will be discussing that, and we will be focusing on high quality resources, but there are other sources of education learning. And I ask you, Dr. Masoud, you said that among what the Queen Rania Foundation has used was a virtual source called Masadir, or resources. Can you tell us some more about the drivers of this initiative and what it seeks to achieve? Thank you very much, Amal. I'm delighted to participate in this important session. I have a presentation, if I'm allowed to show it. Yes, of course, please go ahead. I'm not allowed to use it, it's disabled. The feature is disabled. We'll try to fix this problem. Thank you. It seems that now it's been resolved. Before starting to talk about the sources for teachers of the Arabic language, the Queen Rania Foundation has also provided resources for preschool areas to prepare children for reading prior to them going to school, in addition to other applications that a child can work on directly. Most prominently, the Letters Journey application that focuses on learning letters in addition to work that is being done on developing what is known as the world's journey. We have not decided what the final name would be, but we're working on it. The website for the resources of Arabic teachers focuses on Arabic language teachers from grade 1 to grade 6. And this is aligned with the strategy of the foundation to improve the basics before and at the primary level before moving to advanced classes. Next slide, please. In this presentation, I'll be discussing more than one. I will be discussing from where this idea development. I will give you an idea about this website and the aspirations. From where did this idea originate? According to the results of national tests and international tests in previous years here in Jordan, we achieved some notable progress in the early grades until the age of 15, but unfortunately we still need a lot of work and effort to achieve the desired outcome. We know that reading and writing are key for academic success, and we cannot just overlook the results. This was one of the most important reasons that made us focus on Arabic language teachers. There's also that the relationship between the performance of teachers and the teaching outcomes are very important. So more important even than the curriculum. And this affects the outcomes of teaching. And this also highlights the importance of the teacher using good resources. In Jordan, according to the national survey that Queen Rania Foundation has conducted, it showed that 84% of teachers in Jordan look for important sources for that support training. Also, one of the important issue is that if we discuss the availability of websites, electronic information, when we talked to teachers, many of them said that many Arabic sources have a lot of advertisements, and there were repeated language mistakes in these sources. And it was very difficult to find a learning or a teaching source that uses the diacritics in a very good way, because this is an important tool for reading. So these were some of the challenges. Ms. Maysoon, allow me to follow this. So this is a problem faced in more than one country, which is that the sources of Arabic language teaching are scarce. Now, are we talking about the teachers being responsible based on their own conscience and love for the profession to establish these sources and follow them, or is it a major responsibility that exceeds the capabilities of teachers? In my opinion, it's a joint responsibility. Of course, a teacher is important, but they still need support. In English language teaching, we find millions of sources and that teachers can use. Working papers, learning activities in a classroom. I believe it's a joint responsibility, but those specialists in learning who worked in the area of curricula development, they also carry responsibility in supporting sources in schools. Okay, last question. You have done what you were required to do. You provided this platform for learning. Do you follow if teachers in Jordan communicate with this platform and they attempt to utilize it? Are these resources available. I need 5 minutes
You need
to
5
give you an
minutes
idea
to check
about
the
the
website and
website.
answer your question. No,
Yes, we have
you
time.
have the
Please
time.
go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So these are some of the reasons that prompted us to establish this website, the Masadir website in Arabic. And we also did a comparison with the other online platforms, the free ones and those that are with a fee. We saw that some of the applications strengthen additional or supplemental reading, and they support the teachers when it comes to the advancement of students in reading by using the activities and succeeding in those activities. And there is a big comparison between those that are available for free and those that are paid. In addition to that, there's a lot of great and valuable resources for teachers. There are teachers who are doing the effort and are compiling great content. But this content is being applied in a very small number of schools. So we have to benefit from these valuable resources within the schools. If we move on to the next slide. The theory of change upon which the website is built is very simple. Over here, we want to reach the largest number of teachers of grades 1 to 6 at a very low cost. We know well what researchers say that electronic sources are not supported with developmental program are not sufficient, and we are completely aware of that. But the theory of change that we believe in says that principally or basically that if we reach to a large number of teachers and allow for the impact to happen, we can improve the outcomes in grades 1 to 6. So based on this, in Masadir platform, we can reach a large number of teachers to leave a big impact on the students, and this will contribute in improving the learning outcomes of those students. Next slide, please. Very simply, the website has two main components. The first component is a general framework. This framework relies on the recommendations that reinforce and strengthen and enrich the teaching and learning of Arabic reading, Arabic literacy. And the content translates those recommendations into practical resources. And there are two main documents, the document of the standards of Qatar and the standards of the UAE, because in those two countries, they had laid the standards for teaching and learning Arabic. The second component in this website, over here, we always relied on the recommendation. For example, we used to say that the student should distinguish the shapes of the letters since grade 1. And as I said before, the targeted audience over here are the teachers of grades 1 to 6, and the website is completely free. Next slide. This is a simple example of what the general framework looks like. As you can see, there are main recommendations and sub-recommendations. We wrote these recommendations in a language that is very friendly to the teachers and using simple language. And we also included the examples to support each recommendation. So the teacher can read the recommendation along with the example pertaining to it in order to be able to use it effectively, whether this is related to the method of teaching or working papers, etc. Next slide. As for the website, of course, has different sections. At the beginning, we focused on identifying the characteristics of Arabic text by voice and visuals. And we also focused on decoding the symbols or the letters. And we also focused on comprehension and reading and the teaching of vocabulary, writing, and language patterns. Next slide. The resources are varied. As you can see, there are some of the activities are activities for learning, working papers, lesson plans, methods of teaching, guides, presentations, and videos that will indicate how the teacher is using a certain strategy. For example, if I was a teacher and I want to teach reading, I can go to the instructional videos and watch a video on how a teacher can carry out this strategy in a classroom. Next slide. If you allow me, and if I have enough time to give you a tour of the website, but if I don't have time, if we have enough time, we will get back to you for sure, but we want to be fair in distributing the time to all the other speakers and the panelists. We were very pleased with your presentation. I will include a link to the website in the chat box so that everyone can take a look at it. That would be excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for all this enriching information, Maysoon. Dr. Sally At-Turki, you have a wide experience in working in schools in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. You also left a great thumbprint on helping the improvement of teaching Arabic learning and teaching. Previously, we just heard about the ideal method, but if we want to imagine having them applied on the ground, what are the obstacles facing such visions in terms of the diversifying of resources and improving Arabic language teaching and learning, and what should be taken into consideration by the decision makers in order to overcome these obstacles? Dr. Maysoon, sorry, Dr. Sally, microphone please. Thank you so much, Amal. Yes, I have worked on improving the teaching of Arabic language, reading and writing in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia since 1975. And now I am very optimistic because of the changes that are occurring. First of all, the study by the World Bank, the concern of everybody with the results of the PEARLS or PISA. In addition to that, these series of webinars and the changes that are currently taking place at the Ministry of Education, all of these things are focusing on revising our most basic understandings about the requirements of the 21st century and the kind of literacy that is needed in this century, and also our great need for changing the standards for student learning and the method of teaching. These concepts and these new standards will definitely require us to have teaching resources and human resources that are new and also that are different than the past. So let me tell you a small story to explain my point. And this story goes back several years in our school. And in our school, we do many activities and many things to improve the teaching of reading and writing in Arabic. We train the teachers extensively, and we also provide them with instructional support resources, and we also provide a lot of resources and textbooks for children. And we also provide the instructors or the teachers with the resources needed to work with the children with disabilities or some sorts of disabilities. I was supposed to give a PowerPoint presentation. If we can go to the second slide, please. Or this is the first slide. And now the second slide, please. So for about 20 years ago, one day, a new teacher at the school, she was a third grade teacher. She saw me in the hallway and told me, we have just finished the curriculum for Arabic. So what do we do with the students in these last 3 weeks before the end of the school year? What do you think about giving them an early summer vacation? I believe that all of you are following me, or we are in a hurry for the answer. You all know, and you know that this is not the solution. For me, the Arabic curricula does not end. For her, the teacher, the curriculum was just the government textbook. For her, the teacher, the assessment was complete if she could open a textbook that she was teaching the class and ask her students to read aloud to her, that teacher, from all the books and the materials that were given in the classroom. They were like an entertainment for the children who have finished the work. So for me, I saw that the teacher thought that her responsibility was just to teach. For me, the responsibility of the teacher is to make sure that each student is able and excited to read independently all those textbooks at a level of at a reading level appropriate for that class. Next slide. This is what I was expecting, unlike the expectations of the teacher. Next slide, please. So what did I learn from this story? I learned that there are challenges, and these challenges do not lie only in providing the educational resources. We invested money in the resources and we provided the training, but we have not invested yet in order to change the mental map of the teacher. We did not give the teacher the training and the support that is sufficient for her to benefit from. All these resources and textbooks ultimately were as if they were not used. According to the standards of the past, there was one teacher, one book that were sufficient. But according to the standards for the future, they are not sufficient. Next slide, please. So I contemplated and thought that if our objective is to have each student learn, and not only 41% of them, then in this case, we need new types and many types of resources. I started to compile a list of examples, and these are some of them. And the slide after that, if you please, also, these are some of the things that were lacking before, but we need them for the future. Next slide. In fact, the human resources, of course, they are as important, but they are even more important because the mission we entrusted to ourselves is difficult. This is why we need a lot of specialization, different types of specializations that were missing in the past and that we did not think of before. But each educator that we think of should be well aware of the requirements of the 21st century, and the educators should understand the new standards, and they should be well equipped with the skills needed to achieve the objectives and fulfill the standards. The last slide, please. So my colleagues and decision makers, the decision makers should know, first of all, that the requirements of the 21st century or the standards of teaching must be appropriate for the 21st century. The standards of the past do not work now anymore. Second, all the educators and teachers and all those who write material for children or who author material for children and assessment material should have the awareness and the skills in order to work according to the new standards. And in this case, if we want to succeed, then we will need new resources, new teaching resources, and new human resources. And I apologize to say that I'm sorry to say that this needs a bigger budget, because we need material and resources in order to reach all the students at 100%. 41% is not enough. 41% of the students is, or reaching 41% only of the students is not enough. Thank you so much for this kind explanation, and you're focusing on the requirements of the 21st century. Yes, we were surprised also with a lot of things that have changed our life, namely the COVID. And here in this context, we have seen the how a widespread remote learning has become. And with this, Dr. Walid Al-Ali, the advisor of Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Global Initiatives from the UAE, will tell us about this. Dr. Walid, the widespread use of a madrasa platform during COVID, it has showed us how teaching has changed from a classroom to a remote learning. Can you tell us, Dr. Walid, about what Madrasa platform has provided in terms of resources that make it easy for teaching and learning Arabic language? Hello, good morning and good afternoon to everyone. I am enjoying this conversation very much, especially with all these experiences that we are listening to from the speakers. The report of Arabic language, of course, yes, it shed a light on a bitter reality. Allow me to share with you my presentation. Madrasa platform in general is an initiative by the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Global Initiatives, which aims to provide an educational, an e-learning platform and content of high quality in Arabic to Arab students wherever they are. Of course, we heard previously now from the previous speakers how content in Arabic is weak or a little in volume, and that there are challenges in quality. So we wanted to provide a comprehensive Arabic content for all Arab students wherever they are. We know that this generation is a generation of electronics, and it's an electronic generation, and we want to reach everyone who is seeking information or wants to view the content. At Madrasa platform, we work on supporting and enriching the educational process, and it constitutes of reinforcing the fundamentals of self-learning. Al-Madrasa platform today has about 6,000 educational videos, and there are about 3 million plus subscribers from around the world. And there have been more than 52 million views of the videos in our platform. If we go a step back, we started with mathematics, science, physics, chemistry, and biology by reproducing the content from Khan Academy, but not only by translating them into Arabic, but we reproduced the content into Arabic. And we made sure that the quality was high, and we used the classic Arabic. We made this content of sciences and science subjects and mathematics in order to benefit the students, and for everyone, not only to select a group or select country. So mathematics, physics is everyone. If we come to the Arabic language, we added 2 subjects that we created from scratch, which is Arabic language and the sciences of the future. For Arabic language, we launched it in line with the World Arabic Language Day of 2020, and it contains about 1,000 educational videos through which we work on providing a comprehensive methodology or curriculum for Arabic language in a way that is easy and attractive. As you can see from the picture in front of you, the characters in this cartoon for Arabic, these are the characters that we use for teaching Arabic language and the content of Arabic language. There are the different variety of characters. There are human beings, there are little aliens and different colors. And of course, this is for the younger ages. As for the slightly elder ages or older ages, we use different characters. So all of the characters are appropriate to the various age range. So for example, we use certain characters, certain well-known figures from Arabic society when it comes to poetry, famous poets, etc. These are some examples of the lessons that are given by Ahmed Al-Farahidi, which explains a series of what is poetry, summary, and what is used in this content. What is beautiful is that the Arabic language section received a lot of interaction from all over the world, and more than half of the views of our platform went to Arabic language. We were very keen in Arabic language on certain aspects. First of all, the easy approach to be used by the generation, and the content should be easily accessible. And also we made this available on YouTube to reach all the students, the teachers, the parents, etc. We try to be as comprehensive as possible and to serve all the Arab countries and all the Arab students. Therefore, when we worked with the consulting team, and here I pay them a great tribute to the Arabic language department at Al Zayed University under the supervision of Dr. Hanadi or Dr. Hanada. They worked on the quality and the content, and whereby we created a tree for the Arabic language. And we produced the content, and of course there are questions at the end of each lesson to measure the learning outcomes. And at the end, we tied it to the curricula in the Emirates, Jordan, Egypt, and Syria. And we were keen on including everything. And the last part, we focused on the reviews, reviewing the content, the culture. We took into consideration the cultural content, and
what we have
what we
evidenced is that Arabic language teachers started to focus on the content, and it was very interesting for me that even my daughter in the fourth grade sees that the Arabic language classroom was designed exactly along what is available on this platform. So I find this very interesting. I wanted to provide some figures, and the countries that most view this platform, Emirates, Egypt, Morocco, and this shows that there is wide acceptance and visitorship from various Arabic countries. This is an example of an Arabic language class. How do you write your first poetry verse? My friends, I need your help. My friend Fahd, of course, you all know him. He chose to write some verses of poetry to present before his classroom. But the problem is he never wrote any poetry in his life. We have to help him. So for that reason, let me hear your advice and information. We have to help him. You notice that our approach to poetry was different. We tried to align it to the new generation. Fahad, he's a blogger. So we try to use a language that is easy to for these children to understand. So we try to be to use more appropriate tools with their generation. At the end of this, there's a host of a number of questions, so that would give us an idea about how well the students understood the content. This is for the Arabic language, and we focused very much on early child development. So we found that there's shortage in reading material. So we allocated 200 videos that were just stories, the school stories, and with illustrated books that were in the Arabic language, and they were based on published books that had been that have received awards, and they gave us publication rights, and they allowed us also to present these stories for free for students on our platform. Of course, we want to encourage children to read and parents to read for their children. This is an example of a madrasa story. We were keen with our advisor team to put in place a clear model that is appropriate for the children who are reading, the diacritics, the language used. So we wanted to make sure that it's easy for students to read.
تكشيرة.
Takshira, a frown. Once upon a time in our beautiful world, there was a city, a small city that was called Takshira. Frown in the city of frowning. The residents, so you can see the website later. It's an interesting story. You can please continue. So this is an example of Takshira story, which received awards. So we made it available to children. And we saw the need to present it differently on our website. So this is an example of the page. It was illustrated with many colors, easy to access. We included some features that allows you to even enter the name of your own child, Muhammad Hamda. So each student would have a list of the stories that he or she likes, and we also incorporated songs. And the children could see this in an offline mode. So all these measures and encouragement to students, to children to read, we had more than 1 million reading. We saw wide participation and interest in the content, and we wanted to make sure that the new generation would not hate the Arabic language, but rather find a way that makes these children like to read Arabic. And lately, we have approved the second stage by incorporating 200 more stories. We're working with publication houses to present these stories and publish them on our website. Certainly, this is all free. There is no advertisement, and we coordinate with our education team. In conclusion, I just want to mention that we have also added a new course that we called the Future Series for Children. So we want to prepare a generation of the future, the generation of the future. We incorporated scientific terms such as 3D, Hyperloop, and other modern technologies. No one that has made it available to children in a simplified manner. All of this has always been addressed to adults. So we were keen to produce this series of more than 80 videos that talk about a number of future sciences that presented in an interesting manner, a brother and his sister, and they engage in adventures every day about a specific term. So we have them in 10 sections. Space, modern architecture, environment, all of these were issues that we presented in a very beautiful way. And we have TV stations like Dubai Channel TV station has also proposed to show it on their TV. So this is an example of some of the issues or subjects that we address. In conclusion, and I don't want to take too much of your time, we present this content to the students, educators, teachers, so that they can use them. We want to make sure that people will love the Arabic language again. And we are happy to see teachers using the content in their own manner that suits their teaching methods and objectives. And this is what we're seeking in the coming period, which is to put an education framework that assists the student or the teacher in learning and reading. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Walid. Of course, we feel like little children that want to go back to school because of the video and the explanation and presentation that you gave. And we sincerely hope that that this model will be used in the Arabic world. We move to Dr. Nawal Shalabi. Egypt has embarked on major reform in the education sector, especially to be aligned to the requirements of the labor market and what is required in reading and writing of Arabic. Can you tell us more about this development and what has it achieved? In the name of God, good evening, good morning. In the beginning, I want to thank all those who have organized this event from the beginning, the World Bank, the Queen Rania Foundation. I also thank all my colleagues who gave us their inspiring experiences. I find them very inspiring, and it makes us think very well about how we can develop the reading and writing of Arabic. And we are certain that Arabic language teaching will be one of the most fundamentals of the development of the Arab world in the 21st century. So it's very important for us to focus on the teaching of Arabic language. As you said, Egypt embarked 4 years ago on a new stage of developing the Arabic language to reform curricula in schools. Also part of this reform was interest in the Arabic language. I will be summarizing the changes that occurred in Arabic language teaching and how we moved away from the old way of teaching Arabic. First of all, we focused on language skills rather than focus on the content. The curricula now for the last 4 years, from kindergartens all the way to the 4th grade, shifted the focus on language skills, reading, writing, conversation, and listening. This transition was also accompanied by a change in the content used. So now it's tied to two things. First of all, it's tied to the content of the materials being taught at that same class level. And I will also tell you, talk about this issue later, but now the statements and paragraphs used in Arabic are derived from other subjects. And this content is now dealing with the environment of learners and the real life situations, so that the language itself would be more functional. The other issue I want to focus on is that the objectives of the content were not the only things changed, but the approaches that we use in teaching Arabic, especially in early education, moved to an approach that based on partial learning and comprehensive learning. Partial learning, we learn the sounds and then we move to learning words and paragraphs. So we moved from following the alphabetic order in teaching to its order in words that are commonly used by the learner. We don't teach students A, B, C, D, etc. We are teaching them these voices, these sounds according to their occurrence in common terms. So this was a very important approach in the new development, and we used common words present to measure their understanding and writing skills. What I was trying to say is that Arabic language teaching has become important. First of all, they teach the Arabic language. So we learn the basic skills of the language. And when we move to multi-specializations, we study the applications and projects using what children have learned from these basic skills. It was important for us, if the objectives and the approaches were changed, for us to change also the evaluation and assessment. So we moved from an assessment based on content of school books to to an approach that is based on not based on content. So now we assess statements and phrases that are not in the school books, but they use the same terms. So students are able to apply the skills that they have learned in this approach. So that's with respect to school books and what is happening in the classroom. But in addition to that, we had another important approach, which is the digital learning material. Since 2015, unfortunately, we have lost you. We can't hear you anymore. But we have a technical problem, Dr. Nawal. Can you hear me? Yes, please continue your presentation. We couldn't hear you for some time. I apologize. So now we moved to the second application for the development of learning skills in Arabic, which is digital platforms. Egypt launched the knowledge bank, and this focused on the learning and teaching of Arabic language. So Arabic language books are published on the website, but there is also additional videos, movies, all of which aim to teaching and learning Arabic. And I have to also mention the last platform that Egypt launched, which is We Speak Arabic. And this was a very important initiative for the children of Egyptians living abroad. So there was many complaints from parents and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that we don't have sources to teach Arabic. So one of the methods that we used was the launch of the platform or website, Let's Speak Arabic. And this was in cooperation with the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Immigration and Egypt publication house, which is mostly concerned with teaching and learning Arabic. So we posted all the important books and digital sources available to our children in Egypt. The last thing I want to mention is that since 2018, now our students who participated in this program are now in 4th grade. So the Ministry of Education is conducting a study to see the impact of this development on the development of skills in teaching and learning Arabic. So we have established a baseline, and now our participating children will be subjected to reading tests to see if the extent of the impact of this change or development on the development of Arabic language skills. Once again, I would like to thank everyone, and I would like to assert that the experiences we've listened to from Arab countries are very important. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Nawal, and I hope we will be able to look at the results of the latest study. Now, the children's books are one of the most important source of education. Dr. Taghreed is a pioneer in this regard, and she publishes through the Dar es Salwa publication house. Our books, Dr. Salwa, are very entertaining and interesting to our children and to parents. We want to know from you, especially that you try to write for children and your students, to what extent does this approach help in the development of Arabic language teaching sources? Thank you, Amal, for this great introduction. I'm delighted to be with you and to listen to these great experiences that I just listened to. I will be talking to you not just as an author and publisher, but also as a previous teacher, former teacher, and a grandmother too. So all these experiences that I live and have lived so far influenced my own experience with writing. Book, I will be talking from the perspective of the importance of books and stories as sources for learning. Of course, I will not talk about the benefits because everybody knows these benefits, but reading, for example, helps in learning grammar and terminology, etc. But there's a benefit that often mentioned, which is that reading helps in developing empathy and sympathy. And there was a study that was published recently. This sympathy happens because when a child reads a story, he lives with the story and the characters and interacts with the events in the story. Sometimes they feel sorry, sad, afraid. So all of these are experiences that help children develop socially. But the most important thing I want to focus on is that we need reading just for entertainment, because if we succeed in making our children enjoy reading, then we would have achieved a point in which we can benefit from everything related to reading. But for our children to enjoy reading, there's one important thing, and it's an responsibility on authors and publishers, which is to provide them with distinguished books, high quality books with high content, and presented in a form that makes it interesting to them. And these books have to be available for all stages of development, because we also know each stage has its own characteristics and needs. For example, the first classification is the cartoon books for children, and then illustrated books, and stories made up of chapters, and all the way leading up to the narration. But so this classification is based on a step-by-step approach that makes children enjoy reading, and then they ask for more. And when they do so, we don't provide them with a text that is difficult for them to digest. So these classifications that I mentioned, they are based on foreign classifications, and I feel as a writer that we in the Arab world have to find our own classifications, because we're different. We have duality of language acquisition. So children at 8 years of age, they can read Harry Potter, but we face difficulty in getting our children to read, to achieve this level. So I hope we can overcome this in the future. But I find these classifications not known to everyone. For example, books for like very young children. So we use different terminologies to describe the same level of reading. And perhaps that does not give a good idea to teachers and parents and schools who acquire these books. So it's good. And I feel that Dr. Fuad mentioned the difficulty in finding appropriate books. And it occurred to me that this is an issue that has to be a joint effort between Arab countries to agree on selecting the best books in all countries, and make lists of these books and make them available to everyone. This is an idea that would allow us to benefit and to work on. The Queen Rania Foundation also, thankfully, is conducting international studies and analyzing the levels of reading among children, but we need still comprehensive studies of reading skills, and we need institutions such as the Ministries of Education and Culture to work with publishers. For example, then young children stop reading beyond a certain point, and the reason for that is the absence of varied books that address their different interests at that age. So the governments or concerned ministries have to interact with publishing houses and ask them to attempt to produce or publish books that are appropriate for children at different ages. I'm sorry, my voice is breaking. In any case, this is a valuable message, which is, even though our Arabic language is one, there has to be major projects that bring together all Arab countries to produce books that would limit the poverty of learning in our region. Dr. Ma'moon from Saudi Arabia, we benefit from you as publishing houses, because you deal with the book from its acquisition all the way to selling it. Can you give us a better idea, Mr. Ma'moon? Are we moving in the right direction, and what should change to bridge this gap between what has to be there and the reality of reading? Thank you, Ms. Amal, for for hosting me, and the World Bank, and also thank you to the Queen Rania Foundation. I'm delighted to hear these experiences, because I did not know about these experiences. Was it not for this session? There are things moving in the right direction. We now have many publishing houses that specialize in children's books. There's progress also in the content of what these houses publish. And I mean by that the use of illustrations, of colors. So we were among the first to publish the classification of how books are classified. With Dr. Amal, this has allowed us to publish new products. So we publish series of books according to the level of reading. So we find interest from schools in acquiring these products. And this will help develop the learning and teaching of Arabic language. But also, we have books that deal with reading and writing Arabic from the age of kindergarten all the way to the 12th grade. And this is based on the classifications that Dr. Hanada is trying to develop. And we also books that address the needs of speakers of Arabic as a first language. But there are reading platforms now available. We developed a platform for reading, mathematics, and sciences as well, for comprehension and reading. And I have to point out, Ms. Amal, that we have, there's also some effort by the Ministry of Education in Saudi Arabia, starting with the publication movement. And when we talk about publishing, we also talk about sources of various types. We met with the Ministry of Education to study the reality of publishing in Saudi Arabia. There was also support that we received from the government, and now we're engaged in dialogue with the ministry to support the publication of Arabic language books. There are also awards for publishers and writers, and this also helps. I also want to thank the Ministry of Information in the Kingdom for making these books available from various Arab countries. All of these are positive developments taking place to re-enhance and reinforce sources of Arabic teaching and learning in the Arab world. But there's also a need to provide sources for teachers to allow them to develop teaching strategies and skills based on studies in this regard. We issued 16 books Some were translated books and some were written in Arabic. But we need, for these sources, to contain also videos that simulate how these strategies can be implemented in a classroom. Now, we have translated some videos into Arabic, but they are like just pilot projects. We need experiences that come from the Arabic world, and from the Arabic teaching classroom. So this requires additional effort. We also need to highlight the importance of the family and its role in developing reading skills among children. Perhaps civil society organizations and cultural organizations would have a bigger role to play in organizing activities for children. There's also a dire need for to provide books for children inside schools, and for these children books to be a fundamental part of the teaching of Arabic language in a classroom. You notice that we focus on children because we're trying very hard to plant the love of reading in children at early stages. We also want see further development in children's literature. What we notice in that there's a highlight that there's a focus on the narrative rather than on the need to teach sciences, and we also need dire need. We have to focus on middle school children where we don't find many books. We need a campaign to support production in this regard. We would like to see the style presented in a way different from the traditional way, as our colleague Dr. Tagreed has said. We need interesting, attractive, innovative books that are interesting to children when they read them. We need workshops to train those who want to author or write books intended for young children. So this is a summary of what I have seen in my experience here dealing with books and sources in the Arabic language. Thank you very much for participating, Mr. Ma'moon. We wish you success. We have a few minutes before we conclude, but I would like to go back to you where we started, Dr. Tawfiq. There's a message from the followers. They ask how we can incorporate Arabic language teaching with the skills of the 21st century in a way that reinforces the Arabic identity and culture on one hand, and at the same time try to accommodate developments in the technological field. The question needs another workshop altogether. It's, I believe that now we're engaged in efforts at the level of curricula in language. We're embarking on a huge effort here in Morocco, because the skills of the 21st century are multifaceted.
إفريقيا والشرق الأوسط الذي تم بناؤه من طرف اليونيسف منظمة الطفولة العربية,
which was built by the UNICEF, and we found a lot of difficulties while integrating life skills through the educational programs. And what we are doing now is looking for through the various activities that are proposed to the students. For example, if we took an activity related to stories and enacting the story and being creative with the story by changing one of its components. We can, through one of the classes on stories or storytellings, we can enable the students at a young age to develop creativity skills, but this requires the student, or this requires this subject to be present in the curricula at a very early age, even since KG classes. Teamwork or working in groups or critical thinking for students through the classroom activities that we are suggesting to teach Arabic language. There are many occasions or many instances where we can integrate that, but the difficulty lies in training the teachers and in carrying out change, as Dr. Sally said, changing the mental map of the teachers so that they can deal with the new reality when it comes to teaching Arabic language. Thank you very much, Dr. Fuad, and thank you to all the panelists for this great enrichment of our third conversation. We have benefited greatly for all that you have presented to us. We hope to meet with you in other conversations so you can give us statistics about the advancement or the development of the situation and what is being done in terms of reducing learning poverty and teaching Arabic. The next conversation will be about the training the teachers, and it will be held on the 25th of January. After that, there will be other sessions or conversations on assessments and teaching struggling students and eradicating illiteracy. Of course, this recording and future recordings will be available, and we hope that you have all benefited from this, and we hope to see you once again. Thank you very much to the Queen Rania Foundation and the World Bank. Thank you very much.